Inflation. Is it a necessary evil or something completely avoidable? Who is responsible for driving inflation and driving the prices of goods and services up? What exactly is inflation?
The big misconception that we have even in the media debate is that we identify inflation with rise in prices. So we use the two terms as synonymous. And this is misleading because there are rising prices, increases in prices, which are the consequence of inflation, and there are other price increases which are not related with inflation. And this is very important to be stressed, because if we don't identify properly the cause behind the rising prices, we cannot find the right way to address that problem. So, to give you a sort of definition, we may say that inflation is a generalized and persistent over time rise in prices due to an increase in money supply higher than the growth of output or GDP. So we can have generalized and persistent rises in prices only if, for a certain period of time, the quantity of money into circulation grows faster than the output. If there is a supply side shock for oil that brings the price of oil up, that is not inflation. So price increases and inflation are not synonymous.
What is money supply?
Money supply is, in simple terms, the quantity of money available in the economic system in a certain moment, and it is in the most simple form the sum up of coins and banknotes. And the more we grow our observation point, so we move from M1 to M2 and M3, we include less liquid payments instruments or financial instruments. But to make it simple for the people, let's say, is really the money into circulation.
Is the cause of inflation the government and the central bank?
Basically, yes, and as Milton Friedman was used to say, nobody else possesses a printing press to print in that, so we probably would do the same. But yes, basically the way in which the money supply can increase are first and foremost a decrease of the interest rate, okay, beyond what would be an equilibrium interest rate rising in the market. Then when the government decides to borrow money from overseas or domestically and put that money into circulation by government spending.
Seems a bit unfair, isn't it? Because the ones that get punished for it are businesses. An example, as inflation goes up, pressure for minimum wages to go up also goes up, and you usually see a gradual increase in minimum wages. So are businesses being unfairly punished because of government spending?
Well, it depends on businesses. So I would say that in general, inflation is a reward for bad businesses and bad individuals, because intending with bad individuals and bad businesses, those people that possess a lot of debt, that are overexposed financially speaking, because the real value of their debt is decreasing. Okay, so the actual value, so they are in real terms paying less for their debt, unless the interest rate grows, as sooner or later happens, so that the premium that is being paid on that debt increases as well. But for good businesses, for investors, and mostly for individuals, inflation is bad, because in the end, whatever you pay for goods is a higher amount of money. And it is tricky also, the idea that because prices are increasing, we should automatically increase wages, because you are simply creating a vicious circle, in the sense that what you are increasing is the nominal value of wages, but then with price rising, the actual value doesn't change or even deteriorate if, because of the pressure put by increasing wages, prices keep on increasing further. So you may have higher nominal wages, but actually lower real wages if the pace of price increase is faster than the pace of wage increases. And if you automatically connect wages and prices, you end up in a circle that never ends. And you can find situations like Zimbabwe or Venezuela or Germany and Austria after World War I, when you go to buy your bread via trolleys or banknotes.
The increase in money supply is the primary driver for inflation. It's not an increase in price. You've shown that money supply has increased in Malaysia, and at least in the last 2 years, the increase has been heavy, right? But there is an argument that money supply has increased because consumer spending has been depressed, meaning there's more money in people's bank account, cash savings, and all that because they can't spend. What's your thought on that?
There is more money because the government introduced the so-called relief package. And this has been more like the famous dog that tried to bite his tail. Why did we have an economic recession over the past 2 years? Not because of COVID, because of lockdowns. So we have to put the things we had properly. We had lockdowns created poverty, and the government tried to address the harms created by its own mistakes by injecting liquidity in the system. But this has created a dichotomy between an over-expanding financial economy, a monetary economy, so an abundance of money into circulation, and a depressed economy. Okay? Why? During a depressed economy, we should instead allow deflation to happen. This didn't happen enough because of money creation. And I was telling precisely 1 year ago, in May 2021, in an opinion article, that this dichotomy would have been exploded in the post-COVID period when the economy starts to recover, because then demand push up, consumption starts again, investment starts again, and this is showing that indeed we have created inflation. This was not evident 1 year ago yet, because the economy was depressed and deflationary tendencies were hiding the inflation pressures. The moment in which we don't have that deflationary pressures anymore at work because the economy is recovering, then the trick becomes evident. And again, I was telling this 1 year ago. Be careful, because in this way we are going to face a post-COVID economic crisis, which will be driven by inflation.
I was told that inflation is coming. So central banks try to manage a certain level of inflation, 3 to 4%, if I'm not mistaken. But you were saying that inflation is not very high. Am I right? And can you tell me why?
Inflation is not healthy. If we identify inflation in the way in which I defined at the beginning, it is absolutely not healthy for several reasons. First of all, it's making people poorer. Okay, so the things that you can buy with the same amount of money are less. Okay, people that gain virtues by saving, they see that the real value of their saving dropping. Okay. Then inflation, so the increase in the quantity of money, may have been caused by an increase in government debt, okay, or in consumption, private consumption, fueled by debt. This is debt that sooner or later needs to be paid. So inflation somehow is shifting the burden of economic mistakes on future generations. This is not very good. So we are basically punishing our children and our grandchildren. And this additional debt creates a more unhealthy economy, so less opportunities for economic growth. More unemployment, eventually more brain drain in the future. So there are a lot of phenomena which are connected with inflation. It's not simply the increase of prices in the long run. It's much worse than that.
How does the government cut money supply, or how do they prevent inflation in a practical way without affecting growth?
It's very difficult, and indeed inflation should be prevented in the very first place. But in order to do so, it is important to identify the cause, so money supply, and central bank should be vigilant to have a money supply that keep pace with the growth of the economy. In the 5 years before the pandemic, we had more or less money supply growing at the same pace like GDP. And indeed, CPI was always below 2%. And PPI, the producer prices, which are the first place where we can see the germs of inflation, were even lower than that.